There's a moment in Charlotte's Web that always stops me in my tracks. It's when Charlotte turns to Wilbur and says, "I'm done for. In a day or two, I'll be dead." And hearing this, Wilbur throws himself down in an agony of pain and sorrow. It breaks my heart every time. But did you know that Vivian Gussin Paley used to read Charlotte's Web to her 5 and 6-year-olds every year? And when she got to this part where Charlotte is dying, she couldn't read any further because it made her cry. So she'd hand the book to her teaching assistant and make her read it instead. When I first heard this, it made me smile. I love that Vivian couldn't read this bit. But I also love that she didn't skip the chapter. She trusted her children with Charlotte's death. And I know that for many of us, we worry that stories about death are too much for children. But I do wonder that maybe we've got it backwards. Because when death becomes real and children have never heard a story about it, they have no language for what they're feeling. My name's Trisha Lee, and I've been scribing stories and helping children act them out for over 20 years. And in that time, I've seen hundreds of children include death in their stories. The monster dies, then he's alive again. The baddie dies, then he fights Superman. The princess dies, then she wakes up. When children tell this type of story, it isn't that they're confused about death or don't know that it's forever. It's that they're working it out. They're testing the shape of it. And I've noticed that children only take a story as far as they can cope. They face the monster and then they run back to safety. They kill the dragon and then they bring it back to life. And stories about death like Charlotte's Web or Grandad's Island or I'll Always Love You, they prepare children. They give them a language for loss long before they've got the words for grief. And stories let children feel big emotions without being overwhelmed by them. So that when death becomes real, when it touches their actual lives, they already know that stories can hold those feelings. I remember just after the first anniversary of 9/11, a boy in reception told me this story. Once upon a time, there was a plane and he was going to crash into a building and make an explosion. And all of the people were hurt and they got to die. And then the firemen came and put out the fire. And as I finished scribing, I have to be honest, I felt really unsure. I was out of my depth. Could we really act out this story with 4 and 5-year-olds? And then I remembered my mantra, trust the child, trust the child, trust the child. So I asked the storyteller what character he wanted to be, and he wanted to be the plane. So then I asked how he wanted to show the building, and he pointed to a spot on the stage. And the minute he did that, I felt relieved. He didn't want another child to be the building, and somehow that made it feel more safe for me. So we began. The boy flew to the spot where the building was, and he curled up into a ball. And then I invited 5 other children onto the stage to play the people. And they started walking around slowly as if they'd been hurt. And then when I read the words, "They got to die," all of the children lay down in silence. After that, I got another 5 children up to become the firefighters, and they walked around the stage holding imaginary hoses and stepping over the children who were lying on the floor. Once we'd finished, the room was so quiet, silent. And then almost as one, the children looked at me and said, "Can we do it again? Can we do it again?" And I didn't know what to do. Again, I felt worried. So I said to them, "I'm really curious to know, why do you want to act it out again?" And the girl sitting next to me said, "Because it was really interesting." And she was right. It was interesting because these children had touched on something so important. It was a way to explore their fears, to wonder about something that none of us could fully understand. And images from September the 11th were everywhere at that time. These children would have seen them. But the reverence they gave to acting this story out showed me that they were capable of thinking about something that was bigger than any of us could comprehend. And that's why I've learned to trust stories like this whenever children tell them, even if sometimes it feels uncomfortable or I'm uncertain where it will go. Because when children need it most, story is where they turn. And when we trust children with stories about death, we give them a language for life. So if this resonated with you and you'd like to hear more stories like this, do join our story community. And please subscribe. It does really help people to find us. I'll see you next time.